Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. I sat down with John Larsen on the Sunstone Podcast last year, and so this is a rebroadcast of our interview, of my interview with John. So John will ask me some interesting questions, kind of put me on the hot seat a little bit. So it'll be fun. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Sunstone Podcast. I'm your host, John Larsen. I'm here in the lovely Sunstone Studios on a equally lovely Sunday afternoon. And sometimes I get to talk to celebrities. Mm-hmm. And I can fangirl a little bit. Usually I hide that. But I have none other than Rick Bennett.
No, it's the first time I've been called a celebrity in my entire life. So.
Oh, wow. How does it feel?
Very weird, actually. I am starting to get recognized at some conferences. In fact, somebody came up and said he wanted a picture. I was with Claire Barris, and I was like, "Do you know who this guy is?" And he goes, "No." And I'm like, "I don't know." It's weird. But yeah, it was cool.
Now, let's start off. The name of your podcast is?
Gospel Tangents.
Gospel Tangents. You've been doing it for how many years?
About 2.5.
Oh, it's only been that long.
Yeah, I'm pretty new still.
I thought it was long, and you are a publishing empire. like you film and you have books, right? Yep. And you do the podcast, yep. And you get to talk to people who wouldn't be caught dead talking to me. so that. And we've met a couple of times. Most recently, we spent some time together in Kirtland.
Right, that was fun. We walked through the graveyard, the foggy graveyard.
Yeah, the foggy graveyard. I was looking for one of my mom told me I had an ancestor buried there, but they weren't. It was a child. So, or at least I couldn't find him. But yeah,
that was fun. Kirtland's a lot of fun. I've been there. That was the second time I've been there, and wow. It's a lot more intimate than the Salt Lake Sunstone. It's a lot of fun.
And for anybody who's listening out here, and if especially if you've kind of had a faith crisis, if you're looking to a place to connect with your heritage, Kirtland is the place. The man who oversees the Kirtland Temple, Seth, he's a minister for the Reorganized Church or the Community of Christ. Mm-hmm. Fantastic human being.
Yeah, he's great.
He is intelligent. He's sensitive. His story is amazing, and of course our old Sunstone friend Tom Kimball,
right? Tom's
works
awesome.
out there and gives tours, and nobody loves the Kirtland Temple more than Tom. Mm-hmm. And get on Facebook, let Tom know you're coming. And
I didn't. I totally surprised him on that. So
you didn't know he was going to be there. Yeah. We had a great time, and I think there's a recording. Yeah, there is a recording. If you go back to the archives, you can see where I recorded there. Well, so let's start with your podcast. Then I want to dive into. First, we should level set. Even though I usually never ask this question, but I think it's pertinent here. You still go to church?
Yeah.
And we're gonna come back to that
every
again.
week.
Every week. On purpose.
On purpose.
And that's one of the reasons that I admire you and really like your approach. So, Gospel Tangent started a couple years ago. What is this podcast?
So, I don't know if I should admit this, but I've really, honestly, I enjoyed your podcast, Mormon Expression. I've enjoyed Mormon stories. And I just thought, you know what, I want to dip my toe in here, and I kind of want to talk to people from all different perspectives, whether they're believers, non-believers, former Mormons, and I get a wide range of people. I just like to expose people to a lot of different ideas. I don't always agree with my guests. They don't always agree with me, and that's fine. But, in the month of June, just to give a kind of a variety of people, I talked with Dan Vogel, who is very
amazing mind.
He's an ex-Mormon,
and he's an expert on Joseph Smith.
And then in the middle of the month, I talked to Jana Reese and Benjamin Knoll, who are more on the progressive side.
They're progressive, and of course, Jana Reese writes for several outlets, but she does a lot of current research into Mormonism and expose that on a national basis. Brilliant woman.
And then I ended the month with Elder Snow of the Quorum 70, although he's just... Well, I guess he doesn't get officially released till October. So I ended up with a general authority and an ex-Mormon and a progressive Mormon, which is kind of a good, in 1 month, I mean, I pretty much covered the gamut there. You know, I'll talk to polygamists. I will talk to, you know, Brian Hales, Ugo Perego, Simon Southerton. I mean, I'm trying to cover all the bases. And I don't care if you're just LDS Mormon. I want to talk about Community of Christ. I've talked with John Hamer, and he's a 70 in the Community of Christ now, and Lachlan Mackay, who's an apostle. I've just recently, although I haven't released it yet, talked to another apostle and 70 from a polygamous group, the Christ Church, the Righteous Branch, they call themselves. So I really try to cover all my bases. I've got an upcoming couple of interviews with a couple of Never Mormons, Larry Foster and Quincy Newell, both professors. One's at Georgia Tech and the other one's at Hamilton College in New York. So really trying to just cover Mormon history from every possible angle you can.
Well, and again, I have to congratulate you because you're pulling off what's really difficult to do. The Mormon studies world tends to get polarized very quickly and gets into camps. And those camps tend not to talk to each other. They oftentimes will behind the scenes a lot more than they will, but there's this public reticence on both sides, you know, for let's say critics and ex-Mormons to engage in anything they think might be in the least bit faith promoting. And on the other side, you know, to avoid the taint of sounding like you're talking to apostates or associating with those who are enemies to the kingdom or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, let's talk with Elder Snow. How did you get around that? Because generally they just won't. The general authorities that I have interacted with are actually much better people than the people they play on TV. And you want to tell them, if you just were this out there, you would solve a lot of wounds, you know. So how did you do that?
It took a long time, more than a year, in fact. I met Elder Snow at the Mormon History Association in Boise last year. And I said, hey, you know, I've got a podcast. I'm Rick Bennett. In fact, let me back up a second because I was talking with Robin Jensen, and he works for the Joseph Smith Papers Project. And I said to Robin, I'm going to go ask Elder Snow for an interview. Do you think he'll say yes? And he said, absolutely not. And I said, well, worst he can do is say no. I walked over there to him. I introduced myself and told him about my podcast. Love to talk to him about being church historian. And he said, well, as long as you can get approval from church PR, then I'd be happy to do it, which honestly shocked me that he was that open to it. So I said, I've got an interview with Rick Turley. The time he was communications director, he's the communications director now. He was in charge of public relations before. And I said, I'll talk to Rick Turley. That took a lot longer than I thought. But it took me over a year. And finally, I talked to Elder Snow again in June of this year, and we worked out the details. But yeah, getting through the red tape and knowing who to talk to at the PR was very troublesome. But I got it. And
they approved it, huh?
Yeah. So
well, things are changing fast on all fronts. I would say the last 5 years has brought about more change than all. You know, when you look at the history of the church, it is a religion in flux. And I think one of the problems why Mormons have such a hard time approaching their own history is because of that fact. There's an element of the church, not the entire church, but deep in the bowels of the COB, the people who write all these articles that they don't sign, that wants to present it as if it's this unchanging, you know, the gospel is eternal today, forever. And of course, there's a doctrinal problem of that. That's of course the restoration. If you're claiming you're the restoration and you're constantly changing it, you've got a particular problem.
Well, we believe in revelation, so we believe in change. But God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So there is a little bit of a paradox. Right?
Yeah, yes. There is high tension between those two things. I'm glad you bring that up, between revelation, modern revelation, and the idea of a restoration, and they're both fundamental to the church, right? Mm-hmm. And so I oftentimes feel bad because I'm interested in Mormon philosophy and history in particular. But oftentimes it's really hard to engage with people, because if you're doing a philosophical discussion on a doctrine, you have to be able to address that the doctrine went through this phase and changed in 1837, and then changed again when Brigham Young died in 1877, and then it was revamped in the 50s. And that's key to understanding what happened.
Right.
But most Mormons don't even know that happened because it's been hidden from them.
Right.
And so it makes it difficult to engage, right? Which I think is one of the hearts of what you're trying to do with the podcast, right? Let's see what really happened.
Right. Yeah, I am really trying to go for the history, and I want to be able to talk to both sides. I don't want to be rude to believers, and I don't want to be rude to unbelievers. It is one of the things that I have trouble with on to be honest, I've been surprised. We talked a little bit before we turned on about video. I've been surprised at how many people watch my channel on YouTube, because up to now, it's just a stationary camera. It doesn't move. But I've got way more viewers on YouTube than I do that listen to my audio, which is a surprise to me, because I'm like, the video's got to be boring, right? It's not like I put all these awesome graphics in here and, all this stop motion animation, and it's just a kind of a still thing. But yeah, I am kind of, we talk about the middle way Mormonism. That can be a very difficult space to occupy.
The most difficult space to occupy.
The funniest thing with my Jana Reese interview, I posted a segment and it said, "Why Mormons Leave," which I thought would appeal to, former Mormons. And I got all these ex-Mormons that were just up in arms, because in Jana's research, it said that more people leave just through apathy and, church is boring, than through church history. But all the people who listen to my podcast love church history, and they're like, "She's wrong. This is terrible. If you want to know what Mormons believe, go to ex-Mormon Reddit," or whatever. And I was just like, we're talking about what the statistics say. So I got all the ex-Mormons irritated at me. I kind of had to moderate them. And then in part 6, I asked Jana, what are some lessons the brethren could learn from this? And at first she didn't really want to answer the question, but then she finally did, and she said, "You need to listen to women." And then I got all the faithful Mormons that were like, "Jana needs to shut up." And so I'm constantly refereeing, the Orthodox Mormons get a little bit out of hand, the ex-Mormons get a little bit out of hand, and I'm just like, calm down. This is not a place to argue. We're just talking about the history. So.
I'll confirm your experience. I've had, over the years of me doing this, several rocky confrontations and fights. They've never been with active believing Mormons. It's always been the ex-Mormons.
Oh, really?
It's almost always when I say something, I express an opinion that is outside the current ex-Mormon orthodoxy. And when we say ex-Mormons, I need to clarify, because, ostensibly anybody who was a Mormon is an ex-Mormon.
Right.
But when oftentimes in this world of Mormon studies, when we're talking about the ex-Mormons, we're really talking about people who are in a phase that usually lasts between 6 months and 24 months, sometimes 36. But there's this phase that people go through right when they leave the church, and in that phase they're still obsessed. Matter of fact, they're usually more obsessed with Mormonism and Mormon thought and Mormon thinking. And for most people, they fade out of that. So you can talk about an ex-Mormon who's been out of the church for 10 years, and they won't have this kind of thing. But yeah, I've the Tom Phillips case was one that, because if you recall from a few years ago, Tom Phillips, he had been, I think, a regional authority, a lower level general authority, and he had his second anointing. And then he was excommunicated, left the church, came forward.
Was he exed? I never heard that.
Whatever happened, whether he quit or exed, I don't remember. Yeah. A good catch. But then he sued the church in British courts. And I came out and said the lawsuit's stupid, and it doesn't make any sense, and we don't really want to win this anyway. And I got hate mail on that one, because I was outside of orthodoxy for the. Well,
and I remember when we were in Kirtland, you said that you were a Jack ex-Mormon. I thought that was funny. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our conversation with John Larsen. In our next conversation, John's going to give me a very interesting statement. And so I will have to respond to this.
But the higher up you are in the organization, the less empathy I have for you, because you know what you're doing at this point. There's plenty of bishops and stake presidents just trying to do their best. But if you're in the 15, you get no pass. You get no quarter from me.
Wow. If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe to patreon.com/gospeltangents. And for just $5 a month, you can hear the entire interview without any interruption. If you'd like a paperback version of our transcripts, go to Amazon.com and do a search for Gospel Tangents interview. Also, if you'd like to give the money to me and not Amazon, please subscribe on my website, and I'll be able to send you a transcript as soon as they are completed, and click the subscribe button. You can also find our latest information on Facebook.com/GospelTangents, as well as we're on Twitter @GospelTangents. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. The link is at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents, and you can subscribe there. Also, please give us a 5-star review. If you want to support all of the podcasts as part of the Dialogue Podcast Network, go to lyceum.fm, that's lyceum.fm, and do a search for Dialogue Podcast Network or Gospel Tangents, because, that's a pretty cool one too. Thanks again for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some of our great videos. Thanks again.